Hey Rachel, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with this massive snowstorm. The kids are beyond excited.
Yes, I think we're in for a big one this go around. Rachel, why don't you tell us about your favorite football team and how they did in the playoffs this year?
That does not compute for me, Michael,
Just
because
kidding.
I don't watch sports, as you know, after 12, no, 20 years of working together.
All right, I was just kidding. One
How
more
are
day.
things out west?
It's good. We're bracing for, as the meteorologists have said, anywhere between 1 and 68 inches of snow.
I feel
So
like that guy's been fired in the last 24 hours, whoever was that
I
said.
I wish we had a little bit of that level of leeway in our profession, but the reality is, as the president and CEO of TAG, as the COO of TAG, we have
Mhm.
to do a heck of a lot better than between 1 and 63 inches of snow.
Fair.
And I think it's the accountability and the transparency that is important. And that's actually brings me to this annual compliance and impact report, because this is a relatively new report that we just introduced in 2024. And so it's our second year doing it. And there are incredible results there. There's still a lot of work to be done. To me, Rachel, this is though a celebration of kind of all of the work that the tag community has put into improving the supply chain. What does it mean for you?
Well, I think you're right. I think it's a celebration. It's also sort of a taking stock of what we've accomplished and recognizing what else we need to accomplish as an industry in the coming year. I'm always looking way down the field, football reference. But yeah, I think that we have done an incredible job as an industry this year in really leaning in, especially in a financial time that has been kind of complicated for the industry. So I think, it's exciting to show how much we have moved forward. And again, to recognize that there is a lot for us to do over the course of the coming year, and Team Tag is psyched to get started. Tax compliance and impact report is something that we started last year because we wanted a report. We have lots of different reports, but we wanted one that specifically focused on quantifying the effectiveness of tags programs and our different tools and all the other sorts of resources that we provide to the industry. But particularly the impact in strengthening the digital ad supply chain for advertisers and agencies and publishers and ad tech, because of course, TAG's membership includes all of those different parts of the industry. So, Mike, what sticks out for you in terms of the importance of this report and what's fun about it this year?
You know, it is always fun to get together, do a retrospective of the previous 12 months or so to see what impact we have had. To me, it's really about kind of looking back at the community, because everything we do is because we have such a vast community of volunteers across the ecosystem. They come together and share their thought leadership, technical prowess, sometimes just creative, wacky ideas then end up becoming programs or new tools, guiding posts for the organization. So for me, I always start by kind of looking at TAG's membership. And what's wonderful is that year over year, we've been doing this for 12 years, you and me both.
I know.
And to see the community continue to grow, you know, we do represent the entire ecosystem. But this year, what was interesting is that um, almost 30% of our new members that came into TAG came from the publishing side of the
Mhm.
ecosystem. And traditionally, we've been, a little less than that as far as our overall membership. So it's always great to see when you're servicing publishers and they see the value of what it is we're doing. And also having marketers come in and continue to join TAG and to support our programs. I think that's a real key. How about you as far as membership? What stands out?
Well, I look at our membership and I'm excited about the number of companies that are not just members, but that are certified. And we've never had a higher number of companies that are not just members, not just certified, but certified across all of our different certifications. And that took a while to get to the point where companies were able, let alone willing, to make the investment of time and effort to show what great work they were doing, the standards that they were following in all of those different areas. So we call them our platinum members for a reason. We've had a larger number of companies in that category this year than ever before. And so again, TAG is meant to be a place where a very small startup can come and be a part of what we do and learn what the standards are for the industry, make a lot of, great contacts across the industry, but also then do their part and grow in doing that at higher and higher levels over time. So that's been a really neat thing to see.
That's a great point about platinum membership and the commitment these companies have made. Can you tell us exactly what that means, Rachel?
Yeah, so platinum status is something that we created for companies within our membership who have earned all four of our certification standards, or if only relevant three of them, then three of their certification standards. It's a group that has grown year on year since we created the standard. It's the companies that really understand that, yes, doing the fraud certification because a brand asked you to, that's very important. But there are at least three other things that are very important as well. And that all of our certifications, whether it's fraud, brand safety, transparency, et cetera, all of them are important and working together in order to solve the problems that we're seeing in the industry. So just to doing one is nice. Getting to all three or four that are relevant for your type of organization is what actually seals the deal in terms of improving what's happening across the supply chain.
Yeah, it's fantastic when you see a company come in and maybe taste test a single tag certification for whatever reason. They want to do the right thing. Maybe they have a partner upstream, a marketer client that requires them to be a tag member, to have a tag ID. But really, it's when they begin to come into compliance and to leverage multiple seals in the marketplace, then
Yeah.
I think a company can truly achieve that ROI on the membership at Tag and the time and energy that they put into doing the right thing around their operations. Just look at it. This year, we had 231 companies that were certified, and our seal programs just continued to grow. And we know then that's really important because success comes from kind of the breadth and depth of the companies that are coming into compliance, right? That is always our goal. We want compliance. We want companies to be meeting the highest standards, sometimes even exceeding them, which we applaud them for. But that's what drives change, is having hundreds of companies actually implementing the right technologies, the right standards and protocols, using the right tools to fight fraud, to increase brand safety, and to provide greater transparency. So, Rachel, why don't we start talking about those programs a little bit, because that's really where the rubber meets the road for Tag, is establishing high standards, making sure that we're staying a step, hopefully two steps ahead of the criminal activity, and driving change. You want to talk a little bit about the growth and the impact of our Certified Against Fraud program?
So, looking at the success of those anti-fraud initiatives across the European markets is very exciting that we could save them 3.45 billion over losses that they would have experienced otherwise to their bottom line. But there's more work to do there. So we estimate that there's still about a billion more on the table, not because we haven't gone and tried hard to get everybody on board, but because of gaps in adoption. So we'll continue to push there. We'll continue to educate there and make sure that everybody understands the importance of having the fraud standard. And to Mike's point, also working across the standards as they're all intertwined in the ways that we're cleaning up this supply chain.
Yeah. And if we unpack that a little bit, to your point, we have more companies that are certified against fraud now than ever before, and that's certainly true in Europe. So last year in 2024, actually, we changed some of our research methodology. For
Mhm.
almost a decade, we were doing what we called the fraud baseline and benchmark, where we were looking at uh, literally billions of impressions and transactions through the supply chain and measuring the level of fraudulent or invalid traffic. And over time, we saw this rate go from about 4.5% steadily decline, and it's held steady for the last 4 years or so that we were doing that report at about 1%. In Europe, actually sub 1%. Uh,
Mhm.
Once we stabilize that, and it happened because we reached mass adoption of the
Right.
companies. So once we stabilized that, 1% is a difference that can be negotiated, right? The marketer or agency can negotiate that between themselves and down the supply chain, and it can be absorbed at the right level so that marketers aren't paying for any fraud. But it's a variance then is relatively small and manageable. So what we did 2 years ago was we began to measure the actual savings that the overall industry was achieving through these collective anti-fraud efforts. And that's where last year in 2025, we put out our first European fraud savings report. So, Rachel, when you talk about saving European advertisers $3.45 billion, that's in a single year. And we are replicating that year over year. And what we expect to find is that as we continue to get broader adoption, and continue to advance our guidelines and have stronger tools available in the marketplace, then we will achieve even greater savings. As you said, there's at least another billion euros actually. So
Yeah.
a little more than $1 billion that could frankly easily be saved by European advertisers if simply more of their downstream partners were taking the right steps to fight fraud. So incredible progress, but still
And
plenty of
always
work
more to
to
do.
do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's also why in the coming year and every year prior to this, all 12, you see tag out there. You see tag out there in the market as often as we can possibly be talking about these things, because it is a matter of making sure that everybody understands this isn't just a box to check. This is billions in savings for the industry, particularly at the agency and brand level. That, it's just not that hard to get that savings if we're all singing from the same uh, book. So,
Same hymn sheet. Let's get everybody
hymn
going from
sheet.
the
There you
same
go. Hymn
same
sheet.
hymn
That's the way to
sheet.
put it. So, should we talk
You
about?
know,
Oh,
what
go
I
ahead.
I want to make one more point
Yeah.
about fraud because we've talked a lot about adoption, we've talked a lot about collective success, but that doesn't mean that the fight is over by no means. We've got a grand project now to combat device spoofing in the CTV space. As CTV, OTT, continues to just explode, and ad dollars continue to flow there by the billions.
Mhm.
We have always made it a prime strategy and goal to stay ahead of the fraudsters in that space. So what we did is about 2 years ago was look at the technological infrastructure of the CTV supply chain, and we found that there was a huge gap there. Then fraudsters were actually spoofing the CTV devices and
Mhm.
making it look like they were humans and then defrauding the marketers. So we've been working with the tag community, with the IAB Tech Lab has some standards out now that are very complementary to our work. So again, this is just an example of the industry coming together to continue to evolve our standards, our programs, and the tools available. So really proud of the work that the industry is doing to combat CTV fraud now too.
Yeah.
But I think you wanted to get into malvertising
Well,
next
I did,
because
but now
that's
I
a
want to stay on fraud for a minute.
let's go.
Or actually not on fraud, but just on tag's role in the industry more generally,
Yeah.
because you're absolutely right. This is an area where this is incredibly important what we've done in the past year, but also this is a role that we've played for 12 years now in terms of making sure that the next and the next and the next that this industry comes up with can be made safe to the extent possible, right? So all the way back to, I remember talking to a group about video when video ads were still fairly new and, oh, there's not going to be fraud in that. Of course there is. There's always going to be
Never
something
will
for us
be.
no, of course not. And there is in every new thing that the industry comes up with an opportunity for fraudsters for criminal activity. And it's why we stay absolutely at the forefront of those things. And that's a lovely segue into our intelligence work.
Yeah, this is another area where you've really led. And for folks that don't know Rachel's background, amongst lots of achievements, she also studied threat sharing, intelligence sharing at the graduate level. So she has helped create our malvertising threat exchange, our overall threat intelligence work. So, Rachel, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about some of the advancements we've made in the last year.
Sure, sure. And because it is something that not everybody in the industry actually knows is going on, I'll start just by sort of saying what it is that the Tag Malvertising Threat Exchange does. So, Tag is actually identified by the US government, by the Department of Homeland Security, as the place that the digital advertising industry should come together to share threat intelligence. We've had that designation for a long time now. And it's what enables us to bring together companies that are otherwise competitors without any concern about antitrust issues because we have that government label on Tag's work. So it enables us to bring all of those different companies, particularly the ad tech companies that are seeing a lot of untoward things going on and working now together through Tag to recognize and shut those down as quickly as possible. Again, it's not possible unless you're doing it through Tag. So it's a very important role that we've taken on, and it's one that we hold, very dear to our hearts in terms of its importance. So, the Malvertising Threat Exchange has been around for 7 or 8 years now. It's hard to remember that far back. But it's traditionally focused on malvertising threats because that was a big, big problem for this industry for a good long time, and the criminals never go to sleep, and so neither can we. That said, today it includes sharing more strategically valuable intelligence like tactics and techniques and TTPs, procedures, as opposed to more tactical or lower level intelligence. What's very exciting in this year in particular is the degree to which we've gone from sharing sort of, again, that low level intelligence to really very high level, sophisticated intelligence that can be actioned immediately by the companies that work together within the Malvertising Threat Exchange. So that includes everything from, creative IDs up to, again, whatever this industry comes up with next in terms of ways of describing and making our industry work. But in just the past year, about 30% of the intelligence that was shared through the Malvertising Threat Exchange, again, was of a much higher strategic value. And that's an 82% increase over the previous year. So it might sound like I'm talking gibberish with all of this, because again, this isn't something that everybody is a part of in the industry, but I want you to understand that not everybody in the industry needs to be a part of what's happening in the MTX in order to benefit greatly from the work that those ad tech companies and vendors are doing through Tag's threat intel department to keep the entire industry safe while you are focusing on other things.
That's a really great point. So much of this work just takes place behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
The cybersecurity specialists, the ad ops, ad quality teams that we work with, depending on kind of how big the entity is, their job is just to be behind the scenes, making sure that these threat vectors are identified, detected, and neutralized as quickly as possible. What you're talking about now, though, is then the MTX, this exchange of intelligence, where this group meets every week. They have a weekly call to debrief each other and to share intelligence, but this also goes on a daily basis through our
7.
Slack channel.
Yeah.
And so now they're actually sharing the intelligence, so then it's not just them protecting their companies and their user base.
Right.
Now they are bringing in their cohort and helping to solidify and protect the overall supply chain, which is great for everybody, including consumers at the end of the day, protecting them from this malicious malware that gets and then infects their devices. So
Right.
this is something that is complementary for the entire industry, for our user base. And it's a win-win for us. So when we talk about increasing the amount of highly strategic
Yeah.
intelligence being shared, that's a win for the industry.
Yeah, it's a win for the industry. It's also a win for all sorts of places around the world, because at this point we have the folks in the threat exchange are across 21 hours. They are all over the world, and that means that they are literally working just about every hour of the day and night in order to make sure that these things are shut down, these malware attacks are shut down as soon as they are found in any other place around the world. So pretty amazing sort of global shield that we have in terms of making sure that things are shut down as quickly as possible. And I know we're talking about malvertising, but it's also incredibly valuable intel for our work on piracy threats as well. For the MTX, the malvertising threat exchange, to be able to just sort of get a knock from our piracy side of things and say, hey, this is infringement. Shut it down before that money, before it's monetized, and any criminal activity is given dollars.
Yeah, one of our projects this past year, and it's really going to go into 2026, is to advance our ability to demonetize the piracy, especially ad-supported piracy of things like live sporting events,
Yeah.
streaming content, things then are a single time and place and usually watched live. We, as advertisers, you all know the value of live events, especially sports. They are the thing then people watch live and consume the ads at during that viewing. So we need to protect that type of content. It's of the highest value. We are now able to ingest intelligence before big events. We've got an Olympics coming up, and we've got a World Cup coming up. I mean, some massive, massive live sports events. We're going to be out there working to protect the athletes, the leagues, the consumers themselves, and the overall advertising ecosystem to make sure that this quality content can be monetized and continue to be created for the good of for everybody.
Well said. Well said.
Wonderful.
All right.
Should we talk a little bit about our certified for transparency and our overall transparency work?
Yes. And
You know,
Mike,
we,
yeah,
yeah.
you talk about that one. Speaking of who started what, this one's on Mike.
Yeah, we kind of have a motto here at TAG that what can be measured can be improved.
Yes.
And you would be amazed at what has not been able to be measured in our industry. And that to us is really about transparency. We know that every transaction in the supply chain is recorded and up and down the supply chain, or else money can't flow. So we know that you can measure it, and we know that companies can provide greater transparency to the transactional data. That's why we created Tag TrustNet, the industry's only transparency utility that aggregates log level data from DSPs, SSPs, and even publishers. And that reports up a truth set of transactional data to the buyers so that they can make the decisions they want to do, whether that has to do with supply chain optimization or maybe testing different KPIs. This year, we introduced a new KPI as part of our work with the Association of National Advertisers. They launched their transparency, programmatic transparency report a few years ago at Cannes, and we are powering that research. Tag TrustNet is the data provider and data analyst for that. You'll remember out of that initial report, the finding of massive amounts of ad revenue going to made for advertising sites, MFA sites. That was the research that we produced. just to give you an anecdote of success, this year we found that ad spend on MFAs fell below 0.5% for the first time. So we were talking about before double digit percentages programmatic ad spend going to MFAs. That's essentially low quality inventory, and marketers had no idea this was occurring. What we have seen simply through the availability of more data, that
Insight.
marketers have, yeah, they've shifted their ad spend. Now
Mhm.
they are investing those billions of dollars in higher quality inventory that should perform for them better. So that's just one finding. Probably the biggest finding this year was came out in Q3 in the ANA quarterly programmatic transparency report, where we found that marketers uh, reclaimed $13.6 billion in value. Let me say that again. Because of this transparency work, because of the knowledge that is now being shared with buyers, then they have reclaimed $13.6 billion in value. That is a massive, massive improvement for the industry. And I couldn't be more excited about the work we're doing here.
Mhm. Well said. All right. Well, that's probably it. Speaking of brand safety, transparency is a separate part of our work in some ways, but certainly central to our brand safety work as well. So when we think about brand safety at TAG, we think about protecting brands by protecting consumers, right? So as you just said, for the first time, the ANA benchmark also measured normalized, pardon me, brand safety and suitability metrics across all different web environments. Again, we're still looking at all the old versions of how we do this business as much as we are with what's happening today, new and interesting. But it demonstrates the ongoing success of industry programs like TAG's Brand Safety Certified program. It's been a weird year for brand safety, or a year and a half at this point. But it's something that we have not put the pedal on to taken our foot off the gas in any way.
Yeah.
So, Mike, why don't you give a
We're,
perspective on that?
yeah, we're not pumping the brakes just to keep
Definitely
the
not.
analogy
Not
going.
every work.
Listen, this is an area that has ebbed and flowed, right? We had mass kind of participation
Yeah.
in programs like GARM that were developing frameworks, and then of course that fell out of favor and had to shutter. We've never skipped a beat with our brand safety work because we built our programs in a way that they don't dictate how
Right.
buyers spend their money, where they spend it, whom they spend it with. Instead, again, we are setting a high bar with our requirements. Then sellers need to meet to make sure they are protecting the brands from truly kind of the despicable content that we know 100% of marketers do not want to be next to. So we built the program in a way that survives kind of legal, antitrust, political scrutiny, and we now have the runway to continue to build this out. And Rachel, you mentioned it, measuring at 99.1% of all ad spend appeared in low risk environments.
That's
Again,
true.
tremendous
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
Not plenty of work to be done, but tremendous progress to
There.
protect
Yeah.
marketers.
Hmm. Yeah, and enabling marketers to grow those campaigns without compromising on brand safety, right? There's just such
Yeah,
it's come around pretty darn quickly in this industry once that sort of recognition happens. So kudos to our members in particular.
100%. Nothing happens without their actions and their
Input.
commitment
Yeah.
to improving the industry.
Mhm. That's absolutely right. All
You
right.
want to talk about another tough issue?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really want
Because,
to, but it's important. Yeah.
well, listen, there's a theme
A
here.
hard one.
Tag is not afraid to take on the tough issues. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why hundreds of companies have joined us, is because they believe that we can lead on difficult issues.
Get it
Nothing
done.
is more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, no topic is more is more sensitive and more abhorrent than the existence of child sexual abuse material online. We know then that exists.
Mhm.
Hopefully, none of us have ever had to come across it, and hopefully, no ads ever appear next to it or support that type of behavior. So this CSAM, child sexual abuse material, came up last year in 2025 through a fairly specious report. Then falsely claimed that ads were appearing next to CSAM content and called out tags programs. So we leaned into this. We did not shy away from it. I think it's fair to say we were the only organization, industry organization out there that was looking to learn the extent of the problem, to discover the reality of whether ads were supporting this kind of content, and then to take concrete action. And I'm going to let you, Rachel, talk a little bit about the concrete action, because when this report came out and we received a letter from two United States senators asking what we were doing here, Rachel again spearheaded a long weekend effort to create a very extensive 23-page response, then just laid out what the industry was doing and what was fact and what was fiction. So I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I was pretty tired at the end of that, but it is so phenomenal that we were able to tell the story that we could about how seriously this industry takes this issue. Um, and to work with our members on understanding exactly what they were seeing, uh, doing inquiries with some of our members to understand, was there a problem here or not, having their wonderful input about where things were happening, what we could do to shut them down, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we were proactive because we understood that this was the worst of the worst, right? And there was no way not to step in and try to see what we could do to make it better. But the good news is this was, again, a specious report that wasn't based on facts that came out to start all of this. But, rather than just going, oh, okay, well, it wasn't a real report, there, we're done. We took the opportunity. This is one of the things I'm most proud of in the last year is we took the opportunity not to just say, okay, we've done our due diligence, but to reach out to the organization, the NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, to say, we want to make sure that we're ahead of this even more so next time, right? That we're not caught on the back foot as an industry. So we had the folks, brilliant folks, great colleagues that come in and actually train up the entire tag malvertising threat exchange, all of those different companies that are sharing the threat intel through tag on a daily basis, make sure that they were clear on what had happened, what the problems might be, how to shut it down, what was okay to do legally and what wasn't, because there are really strict rules about even, pulling up on your computer any CSAM, as there should be. So we were delighted to have them not only hear that directly, but then of course have the ripple out from that throughout their companies and the rest of the industry as well. Um, so yeah, it was a horrible thing to end up on our plates and a long 7 days. And again, incredibly important for TAG to have taken a role in this, and we're proud of what we did.
Yeah, really proud
There
of the
next
team.
time. We'll be there next time,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
it, I think the key here is that our programs, our brand safety certification already prohibits the
Right.
monetization of this type of content.
Yeah.
This was not a case where we needed to update our standards. They covered it perfectly. And what we found, we actually conducted 13 individual investigate 14
14.
individual investigations into company practices. Every single company that was identified in the report, we took extensive time to go and work with them, open an active investigation to determine what their practices were, whether they were meeting our standards. And unsurprisingly, because every one of our certified companies has to go through an annual independent audit, so unsurprisingly, we found that all 14 companies were following our standards. that is a credit in a crisis situation. Then our programs held, that they were strong, that the enforcement was effective. And that's because we built them in the right way. I won't back down from that. I will sing that from the mountaintops because I'm proud of our team and I'm proud of the companies for taking this certification in particular very seriously. And that is where, when you separate fact from fiction, you can actually address a real problem. The fiction in this case was, we kept getting companies saying, or press stories saying, why doesn't everybody in the industry just use the NCMEC list of CSAM sites? That was a common refrain from uneducated, mostly LinkedIn heroes who wanted to take a stand. The reality is there is no NCMEC list. NCMEC will be the first one to tell you that such a list doesn't exist. What exists is their ongoing enforcement, and they do provide information, an annual report about sites that they have done investigations into. They do not put that out as a list to avoid these sites. They don't call these CSAM sites. That is a made up term to try to scare folks and to say any site that has ever been investigated by NCMEC should be avoided. Well, that includes things like Reddit and every social media platform.
Right.
So that is not a real standard. It's a simple headline, and it's easy to echo that if you want kind of online credibility. But if you run programs and you actually do follow through to effectuate change, you have to understand what can be done. The briefing sessions that NCMEC supported us was the right way to go about this, not just calling on some made up list that will literally never exist for legal purposes. I think
It was,
that's enough to be said about CSAM.
yeah, I mean, it was the effective way to go about it at the end of the day. So good on us.
Yes, leaders lead. Leaders lead.
Lead. That is true. That is true.
Well, we've covered all of our certification programs. We've talked about our membership. We've talked about a lot of our research. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk just for a minute about some of our other work, whether it's our AdSec threat exchange or whether it's some of our compliance tools. Our tools are resources that we develop with the tag community that then become available to the community to better address very specific challenges. So as an example, working last year on our human created content, our HCC program, trying to help publishers who still create original content without the help of AI, or with content that is not primarily generated by AI, to be able to label that as human created content and thusly signal upstream to buyers what type of content that is, which we've talked to lots of buyers. We brought the industry together in one of our thought leadership days, and buyers said we would value the transparency of understanding whether content is AI generated or human created. So that's just one example of the progress we continue to make as we address the challenges of the industry.
Yeah, and I'll add to those since I'm the one that talks about our threat intel kind of work, that those we have a whole bunch of different tools that are incredibly important in the threat intel side of things as well. So a lot of you might be familiar with our data center IP list. We've had it as long as TAG has existed, a place where you can, make sure that you are not using data center IPs when that's not something that is relevant to the advertising supply chain. But the ones that I think are most relevant to the threat intel side of things are our Pirate Mobile App List. The Pirate Mobile App List is one we've had for a while. The problem is these are pirate apps that are on phones. The app has been taken down from the app stores, but it's still on people's devices. And so what we do is pull together all of the intel, all of the data related to that topic, and we provide a quarterly update to our members about the Pirate Mobile app list so that they can, again, avoid all of those things going forward. So it's a pretty basic tool. It's a very niche tool. The one that I'm super excited about that we've put together in the last about year and a half is the pirate domain exclusion list. This is a massive boon for our piracy threat exchange work because what it does, the pirate domain exclusion list gathers pirate domains that are still active across the world, across TAG's membership, and pulls them together so that, again, the MTX, the Malvertising Threat Exchange, can demonetize things, but also our members can now avoid those problems in the first place from a piracy perspective. So the Pirate Domain Exclusion List is really a threat intelligence tool, not a compliance tool, and a really important one that has helped us work with our partners who are also providing data intelligence into the Pirate Threat Exchange to get ahead of these kinds of problems and hopefully to take them down altogether.
And these are really effective tools, right? I mean,
Very much so.
PDL, you're talking about 160,000 domains and subdomains that have been identified.
Mhm.
With DCIP lists, you're talking about nearly 68 million IP addresses that have been identified as having non-human traffic. Pirate mobile app list, you're talking about 13,000 individual apps that have been removed from the app stores that we identify to make sure that they're not continuing to hoover in ad revenue. So again, massive scale as we've built these tools to be really effective at addressing the challenges that we see out there.
And it's a really important tool, not just for TAG, but for other industries as well. I've mentioned some of our external partners in other industries. If you are an intellectual property rights holder, there is, for most folks, a very complicated and long legal process that you have to go through before you can shut down a piracy issue. It's not the case with TAG. We are in a position where the Malvertising Threat Exchange, all of those companies that are in there can make the decision themselves if they don't want to monetize piracy on their own platforms. So it's a massive leap forward in terms of being able to help intellectual property rights holders globally when our partners can provide us the intelligence that they're seeing for problems. We provide it to the threat exchange folks, and they again they can decide themselves. And generally, they do say, "Yeah, that's junk. We don't want that," and they stop the monetization. It's really the first time that the industry and the rights holder community have had the opportunity to do things almost instantly instead of having to watch this activity continue while they go through the legal process. So both processes are incredibly important, but the partnering of them together is, I mean, it's a life-changing for this industry. So
It is. This is the only initiative where the ad tech community is brought together with the content community.
exactly.
And now we've got Hollywood and others praising the work of the digital advertising supply chain. So it just demonstrates that most of the entities in our company in our industry want to do the right thing. They
Yeah.
understand marketers don't want to be next to this type of content, and they've made the necessary investments to protect brands, which is key. And oh, by the way, being applauded by the rights holders for your work is a really nice partnership that is truly a game changer for all of us. Well, I think those were the highlights for me this year, Rachel. I just want to leave the community understanding that the work will continue. We've just started these compliance and impact reports, and it's really to highlight the incredible work of the TAG community. And the challenges are not abating, so TAG will continue to stay laser focused on these supply chain challenges. And I would encourage all the companies, whether you're a current member or potential TAG member, please join, please lean in, please give of your thought leadership, of your energy, of your intelligence that you're gathering for your company, and share it. Share it with TAG, share it with the rest of the community, because collectively we can save the industry tens of billions of dollars. We can do the right thing. We can protect consumers, and we can grow our industry.